12 years of sitting in classrooms, 4 more years of college, maybe even graduate school on top of that. Society promised you that education would unlock success, freedom, and fulfillment. That promise was a lie. The education system you trusted was never designed to help you think. It was engineered to make you compliant. Every test you passed, every grade you earned, every diploma you received was part of a massive social experiment that transformed curious children into obedient workers. This deception runs so deep that most people never realize they have been programmed. They graduate feeling accomplished, yet something feels wrong. They land good jobs but feel empty inside. They follow all the rules society taught them, yet wonder why life feels meaningless. What you are about to discover will challenge everything you believe about learning, success, and what it means to be truly educated. You will learn how the modern school system was deliberately modeled after factories to create predictable employees. You will see how this system conditions people to fear independent thinking while rewarding blind obedience. Most importantly, you will understand why so many educated adults feel lost, anxious, and disconnected from their authentic selves. The education system did not fail you by accident. It succeeded in doing exactly what it was designed to do. If you want to understand how society has been shaping minds for over a century, make sure to subscribe, because we expose these hidden systems that control how people think and behave. Schools teach students to believe that education means memorizing information and repeating it back on command. This belief system creates adults who confuse knowledge with intelligence and credentials with wisdom. Real education would teach people how to question assumptions, think critically, and discover their own values. Instead, the system teaches conformity, obedience, and dependence on external authority. Consider what schools actually reward. Students who ask too many questions get labeled as disruptive. Students who challenge authority get punished. Students who think differently get forced into remedial programs. The message becomes clear: fit in or face consequences. This conditioning starts early and continues for decades. Children naturally explore, experiment, and question everything around them. Schools systematically eliminate these behaviors by creating environments where curiosity becomes inconvenient and creativity gets stifled. The result is millions of adults who can perform complex tasks but cannot make simple decisions about their own lives. They can solve mathematical equations but cannot solve the equation of their own happiness. The modern education system was not created by accident. It was deliberately designed during the Industrial Revolution, when factories needed large numbers of workers who could follow instructions without questioning management. Prussian military schools provided the template. These institutions specialized in creating soldiers who obeyed orders instantly and completely. American education reformers adapted this model for civilian use, creating schools that would produce factory workers instead of soldiers. The parallels are unmistakable. Students sit in rows like assembly line workers. Bells signal when to start and stop activities. Subjects are divided into time blocks like factory shifts. Students move from station to station on schedule. Conformity gets rewarded while deviation gets punished. This system was never intended to create independent thinkers, entrepreneurs, or innovators. It was designed to create a reliable workforce that would accept hierarchy, follow schedules, and perform repetitive tasks without complaint. Tragedy is that this factory model became so normalized that people forgot education could be different. Generations of families accepted that school should feel like work, that learning should feel like drudgery, and that children should spend their childhood preparing for jobs that might not even exist by the time they graduate. Education does more than teach subjects. It programs specific beliefs about reality, success, and self-worth that most people carry throughout their entire lives. Students learn that their value depends on external validation. Grades become more important than understanding. Test scores become more important than wisdom. Teacher approval becomes more important than self-respect. This creates adults who constantly seek permission, approval, and validation from others. They make decisions based on what looks good to other people rather than what feels right to them. They choose careers based on status rather than passion. They measure success by external standards rather than internal fulfillment. The system also teaches people to fear failure, uncertainty, and the unknown. Students learn that wrong answers bring punishment. They learn that not knowing something is shameful. They learn that taking risks is dangerous. These lessons create adults who avoid challenges, stick to safe choices, and never fully explore their potential. They become so afraid of making mistakes that they stop trying new things. They become so dependent on structure that they feel lost without clear instructions. Most people finish their formal education feeling prepared for life. They have degrees, certificates, and credentials that society says matter. Then reality hits. The real world requires skills that schools never taught. How do you handle rejection? How do you deal with failure? How do you make decisions when there is no clear right answer? How do you find meaning when no one is telling you what to do next? Schools prepare students for tests, not for life. They teach people how to follow instructions, not how to write their own instruction manual. They create excellent employees, but terrible entrepreneurs. This explains why so many educated people feel stuck in jobs they hate, relationships that drain them, and lives that feel empty. They have all the tools society said they needed, but they lack the most important tool of all, self-knowledge. Research shows that rates of anxiety, depression, and suicide have increased dramatically among educated young adults. These are not personal failures. These are predictable consequences of an education system that prioritizes performance over psychological health. The system creates people who are highly functional but deeply unfulfilled. They can manage complex projects at work but cannot manage their own emotions. They can analyze data but cannot analyze their own desires and dreams. Some people eventually realize they have been living someone else's definition of success. This recognition usually comes during major life transitions: graduation, marriage, parenthood, career changes, or personal crises. The moment of awakening feels unsettling. Everything you thought you knew about education, success, and the path to happiness suddenly seems questionable. The beliefs that guided your decisions for decades reveal themselves as inherited assumptions rather than conscious choices. This recognition is not comfortable, but it is necessary. It marks the beginning of genuine education, the kind that happens when you start questioning everything you were taught to accept without question. True learning begins when you realize that most of what you learned in school was not education, but indoctrination. It begins when you understand that the system was designed to serve institutions, not individuals. Real education is not something that happens to you. It is something you do for yourself. It starts with curiosity rather than compliance. It values questions more than answers. It prioritizes understanding over memorization. Authentic education means learning what you love because you love it, not because someone told you it was important. It means developing your own judgment rather than accepting the judgment of authorities. It means discovering your values rather than adopting the values of institutions. This type of education requires courage because it means thinking for yourself in a world that rewards conformity. It means making choices based on internal wisdom rather than external expectations. It means defining success on your own terms rather than society's terms. The most important lesson is that you have the power to re-educate yourself. You can unlearn the limiting beliefs that schools programmed into your mind. You can develop the critical thinking skills that were discouraged in traditional classrooms. You can reclaim the curiosity and creativity that the system tried to eliminate. The great deception of modern education is not that it failed to teach you. The deception is that it succeeded in teaching you exactly what it was designed to teach: obedience, conformity, and dependence on external authority. Once you understand this deception, you can begin the real work of education. You can start learning how to think rather than what to think. You can start discovering who you are rather than who you were told to be. The system convinced you that education ends with graduation. The truth is that real education begins when you realize that everything you learned in school was just the beginning of a much larger conversation with yourself about what it means to live an authentic, meaningful life. Your formal education may be over, but your real education is just beginning.